Hello everybody, my name is Sirs Christanbul to be precise. So you may be asking yourself, why am I floating around in the middle of nowhere in Minecraft? Well, that's because I decided that I want to do a Minecraft build series. So, what do I want to build? Well, one thing I loved doing as a kid when I played Legos was just building just kind of generic towns and building stories around them as I built them, as I'm sure lots of kids did. So, Minecraft being the modern day equivalent of Lego, I decided I'm going to do that exact same thing. So I decided I wanted to build a sort of fantasy themed town, not necessarily medieval, but fantasy themed. So I went and I scouted out an area and I found this sort of hilly mountainous region. It's surrounded by a bit of snow and forest, so it's got a little bit of an isolated, mysterious feel. So let's start. I go down and I start laying down some roads. Basically, I don't have a huge plan or a very specific idea of what I want to do with the town, but I know I need something to start from. No project is going to get very far without at least a basic plan. So that's what I'm doing with the roads. I'm just laying down a basic outline. So I did start using some bedrock for the road, but I'm going to actually have to go back and change that down the future because I realized when I'm not in creative mode, the bedrock is going to have that really kind of annoying particle effect. But that's not a big deal. Like I said, this is just an outline. It's really just putting down some lines so I know where to build things. So I've got sort of two main roadways here, intersecting in the middle, and I'm going to start building off of that. I put down some cobblestone squares there. That's kind of how I'm identifying where I want to place some buildings. And up in the corner here, I started to build a bit of a curved road. That's because I went on Google and I searched some old-fashioned towns and villages. And I saw a couple really cool European villages that had these really neat curved roads on a hillside and a bunch of buildings along the curve. So I'm going to try and emulate that. I'll probably have to go back later and make the curve on that road a bit more accentuated because right now it doesn't look too curvy, which is a little bit difficult to do in Minecraft, but I'm sure I can figure something out. So I'm just putting down little back alleyways there for now as well. I think I'll go back and probably put some small little shops or, you know, huts and stuff in the alleys just to give the town a bit more personality. And I zoom in here. We're going to start building the first building in this town. So I chose the smallest plot basically because I didn't want to get anything really over ambitious on the first building. I just want something simple and small that I could figure out what kind of architecture I wanted for this town and an overriding theme and feel. So that meant what kind of materials I was going to use, what kind of shapes, and what kind of colors, that sort of thing. So quickly I realized, because it's such a small plot, to do anything with this building, I'm going to have to go up. So it started to become sort of a tower. Again, I didn't know what kind of tower, I don't know what the purpose or function of this building is, but I'm just going with it. I'm just trying to get an idea of what I want to do. So I throw in some windows here. It's a 2-story tall building right now, and right now I'm adding on a 3rd story. But it's going to be sort of a balcony. As you can see, it's like an observatory up there. Throwing in some upside down oak wood stairs for some details. And I put in some fence posts as supports. And right here I realize the bottom needs a bit of balancing, so I put some oak wood stairs there as well. And I realize, oh, looks like a perfect spot for a balcony, so I do that. It also keeps the building from being too monotonous if all the shapes are the same on every side, so that balcony adds a little bit of a different dimension to that side. And I realize here, uh-oh, those buildings are way too close. So I throw down a little bit of an alley in between them so that you can get in between the buildings and that we also don't have to worry about the buildings crushing into each other down the road in the build. I put up some fences around the balcony, and I move on to the top observatory balcony level. So I started outlining it with cobblestone because I thought I've used all wood so far, except for the base of this tower, and I need something to set it apart. So I put some more upside down oak wood stairs as supports, and I throw up some torches so you can see a bit better what I'm doing. Now again, I didn't know what I wanted this tower to be, so I just thought, well, maybe it's going to be some kind of watchtower. So I put up some crenellations, and I fly back down to that middle balcony, and I realize if I've got that cobblestone up top, because I wanted to offset all the wood, why don't I do that throughout the rest of the tower? So I remove the wood fence post supports and I replace them with cobble fence as stone supports instead. And it really actually looks good, I think. So I didn't know where I wanted to go with the tower at this point, and I thought, okay, let's just take a break. Let's move down here, something not part of the building, and let's just, you know, kind of work away and figure something else out. So I made these cool little lampposts, which actually become a reoccurring theme in the build. And again, without going back to the tower, I still need a bit of inspiration, so I just stop and I do something else while I think. So right now what I'm doing is I'm throwing in a bit of greenery behind the tower. And the reason for that is simply, I thought with all the stone around in the town, which will eventually go away once we build more, but right now, all the stone in the background, the building was kind of drab and it was sort of just fading into the background. It wasn't popping out. So I thought I'd throw some grass, some plants, bone mealing the ground to get some grass and some flowers, and some trees behind the building just to make it pop a bit. I decided to come over to the right side of the tower and do the same thing in that little center area where the alleys were. And I fill it in with a bit of grass and a tree. Now I come back to our building and I say, well, I put all this green grass and plant life behind the building. I might as well do the same and accent the front with it. So I put those shrubs in the front, and I decide, well, lots of people grow plants on their balconies. I'll do the same thing up top. And right then is where I decided that I had a bit of a theme for this building now. So I start throwing some vines hanging from the top crenellations there. I do go back and change those because they look a little flat. They don't look very three-dimensional. And right here, I thought I wanted some interesting lighting, as opposed to these plain Minecraft torches that were lighting up the tower. So I was playing around with some redstone lamps because I thought, let's do something cool. Let's make some kind of lamps on the actual building itself. But I just couldn't get it to work. You see, I go through just so many different versions and placements, and I couldn't get anything that I really thought looked interesting. I also couldn't get anything that looked like it would functionally make sense on this tower. So I end up removing it, but you know, it's a good example of just going through a ton of different attempts to make something when at the end of the day, sometimes it's best to just stop, go on to something else, because either you'll come back with a better way to do it after you stop and think for a bit, or you'll just come up with something better entirely, which is what I did. I don't bring those lamps back at all. So I'm just adding some more detail above the doors in this middle balcony, toying around with a few things to, again, just give it some dimension. The little details are really what make builds like this in Minecraft not feel like square structures. That said, the crenellations here I thought felt a little flat. So I add some upside down stone stairs to make it a bit three-dimensional. And now the whole tower is looking really nice. It's got some volume, it starts to spread out near the top, and it's got personality. And I'm still toying around with those vines, trying to make them work. And now here I went, you know what? Why don't we just line the whole top of this tower with plants? And this is where the theme of this tower starts to show. I decide this is going to be the Botanist Tower. Maybe the town botanist works out of this tower, grows plants and herbs for the city. Maybe they teach herbology to local residents who are interested. I went back and I changed some of those plants so that they were just different kinds. They were all the same plant originally, and it just looked a little too linear and flat. So as soon as I added a couple different kinds of plants, it really starts to pop, and the personality of the tower really takes shape. I throw down a welcome mat down there, just to make the tower a little bit more inviting. And I start to work on finishing off the top. So at the moment, it's just an open balcony at the top there with a hole down the middle of the tower. Rain, snow, all the elements are going to get in. So I start making some cobblestone supports, and I decide, you know what? This is where I want to put some of that interesting, unique lighting on the building. So I throw some torches on the top of those cobblestone supports. I move the camera here shortly while I finish up the top here, and I decide I'm going to start by framing it with cobblestone. But quickly, I realize that's not a good idea. It doesn't look right. It sort of makes the tower look like it's two separate buildings, like a cobblestone building dropped on top of a wood building. And I was thinking, functionally, it would be a bit weird to have such a top-heavy structure on the top of a tower. So I decide to go with wood trellises, like you see in a garden center or a greenhouse. And I stop here so you can see the structure of those trellises, and I move underneath. And what we're doing here is just getting a view from the bottom so you can see my idea behind those trellises, so you could look up and you could still see the sky, but that doesn't solve the fact that there's still no actual roof on this to keep out the elements. And here is where the final point of this build comes to life. I start adding in some leaves. And my idea is that these leaves are basically like a bushy vine plant that the botanist has growing in that trellis at the top of the tower. So it's providing shelter for the tower itself, and it's also providing shelter for all the plants that the botanist grows at the top of the tower. All the herbs, maybe they're growing medicinal plants for the town, for the village. So I'm trying to keep these vines looking organic and not too square. Just kind of going around in circles and adding in bunches where I thought it needed it. Fleshing out the top of this botanist tower. I threw on some vines there to just give it a bit more dimension, a bit of a different shade of green and different texture through there. And those vines will also continue to grow, and they'll look pretty cool. So as the sun sets, we get to see the botanist tower with those cool little lamps flickering away, the vines growing. Wow, this build really took life as soon as I kind of got an inspiration for what I wanted to do. And I just, instead of a plain watchtower, it became the botanist tower. This is where they're going to grow all their plants and sell them to the local townsfolk. So we move away to get some final shots of the botanist's tower. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Christanbulian Minecraft build series. I haven't named it yet, but I will soon. So, stay tuned for some more buildings in this village. And until next time, bye!